Hey guys, it's Rex here. Before this episode begins, both Elijah and I wanted to pay our respects to the passing of Shinichi Yanagisawa, who plays Miyamoto in this episode's film, The X from Outer Space. Although he passed over a year ago, his death had only just very recently come to light. Born in December of 1932, Yanagisawa became an entertainer in the early 1950s and has starred in numerous films and television for Nikatsu, Shochiku, NHK, Toei, and other companies, having appeared alongside many notable actors such as Akira Takarada and Tadao Takashima. We would like to dedicate this episode to Mr. Yanagisawa. Rest in peace.
Atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a common rider who was the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to a brand new episode of Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely co-host.
Hello, I am Rex.
And we are back at it again here in the second week of our Kaiju Month.
Cool.
Granted, we've also just been weekly for a while now, but we're not going to acknowledge that.
But we just did.
Well, it's poor writing on our half. It's a plot.
This isn't scripted.
Yeah, it's not. But if it was, it would just be a plot convenience that happens, and then we're just going to skip away from it.
Are you taking inspiration from the Godzilla vs. Kong School of Writing, or
absolutely?
Or sorry, just the MonsterVerse School of Writing in general.
Yeah. Well, there's our Godzilla vs. Kong joke for the episode. Look at that, Rex. Within a minute, you've already accomplished the first thing on our bingo board.
It's a great. I love beating a dead horse. Okay.
That's funny.
I mean, can you blame me?
Not really.
Exactly.
So here we are, back at it again. This episode should be going live the second week of July, which is right before G-Fest. So hopefully everybody going to G-Fest is going to have a good time. I'll be there, and
I won't.
One day, Rex. One day we'll get you there.
Hopefully.
So here we are, Like I said, this will be coming out in July, but in the meantime, how have you been, Rex?
Oh, I've been doing wonderfully, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now, I get to somewhat chill out and relax for at least a few days.
Oh, well, that's a first for a while.
I know, right? It's great. And, well, I guess I will have to do some editing, so maybe not entirely.
But editing's, that's, you still get to sit back and just kind of chill at a computer.
I guess I am sitting, so that's true.
Yeah. So, besides relaxing, what have you done anything? Went out anywhere?
Yeah. I was out today just walking around with some friends,
Nice.
We didn't really get to do too much though, sadly.
That's still better than just like working or sitting around doing nothing.
I also did that today.
You worked?
Yeah.
Fun. I wish I could say the same, but, the life of one of Elijah Thomas is not one to be met with relaxation and breaks and not doing anything. Because, I've been, as I brought up last episode, I've become a frequent member of the Kaiju Weekly News live streams where I talk about the movies and television news. So if you want to hear me talk about news, that's where you'd find me at. But, I've been doing research for that, and I did that researching for this podcast. The G-Fest competitive short film I'm working on, I've been working on extensively since, like, mid this week of this recording. So I've learned how to animate, I've learned how to rotoscope, and I've been learning how to sound mix. So
Nice.
yeah, it's been a lot of work. I've probably, I mean, I started development on this short film. I mean, my first thoughts of it were probably back in January. And then I started developing it in March, finished the script early April, filmed it late April. And since May, I've been in post editing and then recording ADR and doing sound clips and mixing all of it together and doing post-production stuff and special effects and whatnot. It's been a pretty crazy, like, I've never felt more like I'm actually working on a full-fledged production until this this film, but here we are. But it's coming out pretty good. It's pretty complex, I would say, in terms of editing. I know I've posted some images on the ET13 Twitter account where I've shown off the timeline, and there's like 12 layers of audio and about 6 or 7 layers of video. So
sounds like it's doing you in.
You know, I'll honestly, and you can, if you want to hear my full thoughts on like film production and whatnot, definitely check out episode 1 of Kaiju Conversation Live, because I do talk about that. But really and honestly, like, this hasn't, like, I'm not tired. I'm not tired of it.
Good.
I think what it is I've learned so much since my last film that I've finished, which was back in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Since like that one, I've developed a few short films. I haven't posted. There's 2 I've finished that I haven't posted publicly. There's one that is sitting waiting to be finished, which all I have to do is record some audio for it. I don't know why I've never finished it, but I do need to. And then there's 2 films that I've started that I haven't completed. One of them's still in script. One of them I've filmed like a fifth of it. And then I have to write the script for the rest. I have the story outline, but this is like the first film that I've really like. I mean, I did a film called The Invisible Teacher, which was pretty low budget and production wise. There wasn't a whole lot done with that. It was meant to be more of just like a metaphorical, like, what's in my head short. And then I did one called Bio Project, which was a one-shot horror that I just did out of like, I had just watched One Cut of the Dead and I was like, oh, I want to do something. So I did that for a school project, and I liked that one because of the filming conditions, though it didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it. But either way, that was pretty good. Both of those were kind of my entry into Adobe products. I'd kind of like to redo Bio Project, to be honest. Now that I know a little bit more, I feel like I could do something a little cooler. But
possibly.
Actually, but Bio Project did lead into one of my unreleased projects that I'm working on slowly. That I would say kind of is going to be kind of a big thing for me when I eventually get done with it. But no, I've been working on that, anyway, back to the point I was making. Like, the work on this short film has just kind of boosted my excitement and interest and desire to do this stuff. Honestly, I think it's even bled into the podcast because I've been doing the Kaiju Weekly live streams, the Kaiju Conversation live monthly streams. I write for Kaiju Ramen quarterly, and as of currently, I've been making a video at least every quarter for Kaiju Ramen. And then we do the podcast, and I've been working on the short film, and I feel like my creative flow is it's starting to become second nature, which has been really nice. normally at this point, like based off of Quasar Chapter 2, which was my second short film I ever did, which was a competitive piece for G-Fest, at this point, I would be stressing out, and I'd be freaking out, and I'd be pissed because I couldn't get things exactly how I wanted.
Mhm.
Granted, that's because at the time I was filming on my smartphone using smartphone editing software, which is like
Garbage.
compared to Premiere Pro and a MacBook. I'd be like angry every night because I couldn't get something just right, and I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I don't think I will ever be able to rewatch Quasar Episode 1 or Quasar Chapter 2 because I like there's no color grading, there's no real sound mixing, there's no like ADR or like proper animation. It's awful. The first one especially because I had a week to make that. Like and to think that was 4 and 5 years ago, like those two, and here I am going back to G-Fest with the competitive piece. Like I'm pretty excited. It's a good comeback. I'm really excited, and I've come to this conclusion. So my first two pieces I didn't win. I'm not surprised. They're awful. But I don't think I'm going to win this year either, to be honest. Even though I think this is probably my best short film, and I've spent so much time developing it, I don't think it's going to win. But I'm going in with that idea, that thought of, okay, this is probably not going to win. If we're going to be honest here, I don't think this is the right crowd for this film. I'm fine with that. I'm legitimately okay with that because I'm happy with how the posters come out. I'm happy with how the film looks. Like if this were to be like the final cut, even though I'm missing about 13 things, I wouldn't be too upset. There's three things I'd say that I'd be a little upset about, but that's really and honestly it. Like everything else I'm pretty content with. I've learned so much. Like I've learned how to do better transitions. I've learned how to do rotoscoping and compositing and sound mixing. It's just been great. Like this was a great experience, great opportunity for me to just make something. My wallet says otherwise, and I think all of my close friends are tired of me like every day being like, I gotta work on the short film. I don't have time. On my 15-minute breaks, I'm gonna work on my short film. On my hour lunch, I gotta work on my short film. When I get off work, it's short film time. Before work, I gotta get this before work. I have to go to work for my short film just so I'm ahead. Hey, can you do this for the short film? Hey, what do you suggest to do for this short film? Like, that's all I'm doing. And like in this, and I think in the last few episodes, I've been like short film. Like my whole life right now is getting this short film done. Like I told you, I think pre-recording, I only have, as of this recording right now, I have 6 days to have it finalized, exported, and uploaded. So I am down kind of to crunch, like less than a week, and I still have about 12 things left on my list to do. But that's honestly how filmmaking works. Like, I think about how Megalon had 3 weeks to film, and it had like 4 weeks to edit and do all the like compositing and VFX. And how it didn't even have a script. Like Sekizawa and Fukuda just kind of made it on the fly. Like the fact that, I've had I'd say about 3.5 months to do this. Like, I feel like I'm pretty all right. I think I know what I'm doing, and I think that I have done everything early enough that there's one thing I'm probably going to be a little short on time for, but everything else I think I'll be able to get done, and I'll be pretty happy with the end results.
Good.
But with that being said, I haven't watched any Tokusatsu, Rex. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
no.
know I let you down between working on Kaiju Ramen and podcast and my short film and actually having a paying job that pays for all this stuff. I failed to watch a kaiju.
That's horrifically disappointing. Wait. How are we gonna do an episode if you haven't watched anything?
Well, how about Tokusatsu? Have you watched any kaiju in Tokusatsu?
Yeah, a little bit actually. Not very much though, admittedly.
Good to know I'm not the only one that's been kind of dry this week.
Yeah, I mean, I watched like a couple episodes of V3. I'm entering the final arc of that show, where Rider Man is introduced.
Is that another Kamen Rider, or is that...
Yes, the fourth Kamen Rider.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, the one who's like part of his face is exposed.
I know nothing about Kamen Rider.
Oh, god damn it.
I know.
But yeah, outside of that, admittedly, I kind of got into Ash vs Evil Dead, so I've mostly just been binging that.
Nice.
Oh, I did start that new Skull Island series, the new Monsterverse show.
So, okay, I do want to talk briefly. I haven't watched it, but
Yeah.
I've read my Kaiju Ramen friends. I've read some of my other kaiju friends, and I've read from our Discord server. And everybody just keeps saying the same stuff.
Mhm.
That the last 2 episodes are the only thing worth it, and the rest is kind of a disaster, and it's not worth the wait, and it's pretty bad, and it's kind of pointless and worthless to the Monsterverse.
Mhm.
How much have you watched?
I have seen the first 3 episodes so far.
And there's only 6, right?
8.
Oh, so you've seen almost half.
Yeah, roughly.
So
Rather.
out of the 3 episodes, Rex, would you agree or disagree with disappointing, worthless, irrelevant?
Yeah, pretty much. It's not awful. It's just very, very unremarkable. Like, yeah, I find like the main kid character rather annoying. His dad is okay. The other characters are kind of okay. The monster designs are a bit generic, but some of them are neat. Yeah, for a show that's apparently set in the Monsterverse, there's, to my understanding, only like maybe like 3 references.
Well, obviously there's Kong
Yeah,
and Skull Island.
there's Kong, there's the
And the
Skull
Skullcrawlers.
Crawlers. It's set on Skull Island, and there's like one guy in episode 2 that loosely references the events of Skull Island. And to my understanding, that's about the extent of all the references.
Period?
From what I've heard from others, that's all the references
Huh.
to the rest of the Monsterverse.
See, that's... On Kaiju Weekly,
They
I
haven't
brought
even
up...
mentioned the Iwi, surprisingly. I don't think the Iwi get any reference at all in this.
But aren't they on the island?
They should be. You know, they're not dead yet.
Well, according to the comics, they're not even dead yet.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So is this another great example of how there's like an alternate universe where the Iwi just don't exist on Skull Island?
I don't know. It's like, honestly, there's no this just, yeah, no, there's so far from what I understand, it's just so tangentially connected to the Monsterverse that it may as well not be. I mean, the only like kaiju monster designs that really fit the Monsterverse are like Kong, the Skullcrawler, and maybe like 1 or 2 of the other animals in the show. I mean, some of them are okay, but like I don't think any of them were really very remarkable.
I know a lot of people have been disappointed because, if we're going to be honest,
to be fair, how many of Kong's villains are very remarkable in their design?
Orosaurus.
Yeah, but like to be fair, the Toho movies are the only good Kong movies. I'm kidding.
You almost got a fight with that one.
I was kidding, but they are the best two King Kong movies. Yes, they are.
We'll talk about that on a later episode. But what's this?
King Kong Escapes is an amazing movie, man.
I'm gonna stop talking.
Because Kong's best antagonists are Gorosaurus, other dinosaurs, which are public domain creatures, except they can't use them here.
Because of Universal.
Yeah, lame. The Skullcrawlers and Mechanicong.
Yeah, because, I mean, the sea serpent and the giant snake are both kind of mundane.
Yeah, to say the least.
The giant bear's pretty mundane.
What movie has a giant bear?
Son of Kong, the movie we covered like a year ago.
Did that have a giant bear?
Yes.
Huh.
It had a giant bear, and I think there was an Elasmosaurus.
I remember that. I remember that thing showing up. And like Kong, does Kong fight a Styracosaur in it as well? Or something? Or
I think. Kiko? Yeah, I think so. The final battle is with Kong and a giant bear. Or Kiko.
I might vaguely remember this, maybe.
I mean, to be fair, Son of Kong is quite literally the most forgettable Kong movie, period.
Yeah.
Quite literally, like, it doesn't hold up to the original status. It's not Toho. It's not Godzilla related. It's not modern Hollywood blockbuster, and it doesn't have...
And it's not the disaster that King Kong Lives is.
Yes.
So I'm told.
It's worse. Never seen it. It's worse. Actually, I don't know if Son of Kong's worse, but it's still like it's on the same level. But King Kong Lives has Linda Hamilton's breasts and a female Kong. And
Linda Hamilton returned for King Kong Lives?
Linda Hamilton was only in King Kong Lives. You're thinking of Jessica Lange for 76.
Oh. Huh.
See, who's the real Kong fan here?
Oh, not me. I'm a self-admitted not a Kong fan.
Admittedly,
he's a mid. He's a mid.
Honestly, I think the last Kong movie I watched, or King Kong movie that I watched, was Son of Kong.
Yeah.
No, it was King Kong versus Godzilla.
No, it was Godzilla vs. Kong, remember?
That's not a King Kong movie.
It needed to be the same difference.
I still, like, I haven't watched Kong Return to the Jungle, the animated movie, The Mighty Kong. I haven't seen, like... There's a lot of Kong movies and Kongsploitation films I haven't watched yet.
Yeah.
But actually, one of them, which was titled Journey to the...
There's only two good ones.
Well, there's Yeti Giant of the 20th Century, which has...
Oh, no, I was referring to King Kong movies.
Oh, King Kong movies.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think there... Well, actually, no, I do agree that there's only two, but I think we disagree on those.
Wow, okay.
We need to cover more King Kong.
We do.
Yeah. Eventually we will. But before we change subjects, I wanted to get back to the main point I was trying to make. It's kind of sad. Yeah. It's kind of sad because Kong Skull Island, like, it just being brutally honest here, Kong Skull Island, the 2017 movie, is the most visually stunning kaiju movie that America's produced since Pacific Rim. Granted, that's only like a 4-year gap, but before Pacific Rim, I honestly couldn't tell you what. Maybe Kong 05, last visually interesting American made.
Cloverfield is pretty cool,
but it's not visually interesting. Cloverfield's
it's at least unique in its visuals.
Yes, it is. but like just on a presentation level, Skull Island is the best in Pacific Rim, and before then I would probably put like '05 King Kong, or maybe like Tremors. Even then, I don't know if Tremors would classify as visually interesting. It's just a good movie with good writing.
And a cool monster.
And Skull Island, I think, is probably the best written since like Pacific Rim, and before then, definitely like Kong '05. Or I mean, Cloverfield might be up there.
Maybe not in the writing. That movie's more just it works because of its interesting scenarios, more than having good character writing.
True. But like, it's really disappointing that Skull Island, the I guess sequel to Kong Skull Island, ends up falling flat of that from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Like, that sucks. Like, Jordan Vogue Roberts made the best MonsterVerse movie in just terms of monsters, monster action, visually, and writing.
Yeah, and I mean, what makes it disappointing for me is not just that it's like kind of just really lackluster. It's also the fact that, you know, coming off Godzilla vs. Kong, and, you know, we have what's it called? The Godzilla X Kong movie coming out. Yeah. I don't like Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm gonna be honest, I have a funny feeling I'm not gonna be a big fan of Godzilla X Kong. Call me crazy.
Likewise.
So like for me, the MonsterVerse in terms of films at the moment, kind of dead in the water in my eyes. But like the TV shows, like the Skull Island show and the Apple TV show, I feel have had like the chance to potentially slightly redeem the MonsterVerse in my eyes. And I mean, we still don't know how Godzilla and the Titans, or Monarch Legacy of Monsters, I guess it's being called now, will be, since, you know, they haven't even like given us a release date on it, even though it's supposed to be like this year, I think.
Right. It's either late this year or early. Well, it has to be late this year because it'll
probably be like, I think Apple tends, well, I don't know when exactly. It'll be like, I imagine like September, October, maybe November, but
well, if I remember right, the report suggests that it is supposed to build up to the release of Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
Yeah, I've heard there's like some sort of like connection between them. But yeah, I mean, Apple TV, from what I understand, doesn't really, and I guess most streaming shows don't really give too much information until like a couple weeks, or sorry, like a couple months in advance, really.
Right. And I know
the exception really being Camera Rebuff.
This is true. And I know that at least, well, in terms of both Monarch Legacy of Monsters, correct?
Yeah, I believe that's the title.
Monarch Legacy of Monsters and Skull Island, both are supposed to have second seasons.
Yeah. I mean, Brian Duffield, the executive producer of Skull Island, is pretty active on Twitter about how he has a lot of, I mean, it sounds like he might even have a completed script for the second season, potentially.
Yes, because it sounds, from my understanding,
either that or he has a very good idea of where it's all going.
Yes. But if you look at the reviews for this show, it's not good. Like, audience and critic.
I mean, I saw like critic reviews. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes, say what you will about them. I saw like that had like an 80% last I checked.
I thought it was 60.
I mean, maybe it's changed. I don't know. I saw like okay, it's 70% at the moment. But mind you, that's only 10 reviews.
And then so the audience scores also went up because it was sitting at like a rotten like 60 or 40%, but now it looks like it's gone up as well.
Yeah,
but
68.
Like I really don't, and nobody is really talking about this besides people saying it's disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Were we really expecting
I
anything
was
other than to have like the Pacific Rim, the black thing of like, hey, this exists, and 2 days later be forgotten about?
well, see, here's the thing. I was hoping it was going to do well because I like the visual look of this show. It looks like a
Yeah,
like
the
Dino
animation
Squad or
so far is
something.
actually pretty good for the most part, I'd say. Again, I'm not a
And
huge fan of the monster designs, but like the actual animation looks pretty good.
so to me, it's disappointing to hear that like the writing sucks and the story's not very compelling, and
Hmm.
it's only like tangentially connected to the MonsterVerse. And I like if this is how Legendary puts out the content for the MonsterVerse on the television side, I'm legitimately nervous for Monarch Legacy of Monsters
I mean, to be
because
honest, I feel like ha- I feel like the concerns for this should more go to like future animated series from Powerhouse Animation and all them, rather than necessarily Apple and the team behind that. I mean, the
Mhm.
fact that apparently Legacy of Monsters is supposed to connect in some way to GXK, it's gonna and is literally about the aftermath. Quite like half of it's about like the aftermath of Godzilla 2014.
Mhm.
It's connected to the MonsterVerse a lot more than this is from the get go.
This is true. But I don't know. I just it's really disheartening because I actually was really like pushing and hyping up to see Skull Island, and now that I'm hearing that it's not really that impacting like
Yeah, I'll
and
say
I
I
think
definitely so far I liked Pacific Rim the Black, both seasons of that more than this. So
mm,
take that for what you will.
isn't there 3 seasons of that, or
Two,
is that just Ultraman?
3 seasons of Ultraman, two of Pacific Rim.
Gotcha. Okay. So it also kind of just sounds like it's a Legendary Pictures television problem because the Black also kind of has that same issue, I think.
Of what?
Like just lacking some quality in certain departments.
Yeah, I mean, it does have one. I think the big issue with this is kind of a similar one to what the Black had, where it focuses on where its focus is annoying teen characters, or in this case, just mainly one main one that's really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a similar issue. I do find the kid in this less annoying than the two in the Black, but at the same time, I found the actual story of the Black more interesting and compelling from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
Where like I was I was able to watch like both seasons of the Black in one sitting, like when they came out. Of course, not watching 12 episodes in one sitting. God no.
Right.
But like, whereas this, I got past episode 3 and I'm like, I'll watch the rest of this tomorrow, and then I didn't have the time for it.
Ooh. Well then.
But yeah, I'll get around to it, I swear. But Ash vs. Evil Dead takes priority.
See, I still need to watch season 2 of Pacific Rim the Black, seasons 2 and 3 of Ultraman, and Skull Island. So I'm very much behind on the
Yeah,
Netflix side of anime tokusatsu and kaiju stuff, and that's not even including like the Full Metal Alchemist live action duology that's on there.
it happens.
It does. But yeah, well, so if you only watched a handful of episodes of V3 and Skull Island, what are we? Should we just go? Like, I don't remember watching anything. So
Well, hey, at least we got a short recording out of this. That's awesome.
yeah,
For the
like
editor,
40
yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're gonna wrap things up here if you can't think of anything else.
Ah, great.
Okay.
This will be great for me in editing.
Right? Well, then, I guess we can go ahead and put an X on this episode and
Yeah.
move on.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Time to link ourselves.
yes, go ahead.
Wait. Hang on.
What?
I just thought of something.
What?
Oh, that's right. Earlier today, I watched another movie. I almost
Oh,
forgot about this. I almost forgot about this.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, have you ever heard of The X from Outer Space?
You must have just cured my amnesia because I watched that movie today too.
Oh, really? Now
Yeah.
that's crazy.
So maybe we should do a podcast episode. I mean, it is Kaiju Month, and that was Shochiku's entry into the year of Kaiju from 1967.
Great. Now I have to edit. God damn it.
It's fine. It's fine. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into the X
Jesus.
from outer space. Let's
Space
cue the
Yilala.
yes. So we are covering the X from outer space. That was probably the strangest transition into the film.
Yeah, we almost got to leave.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed now.
Which it's kind of funny because that was probably the strangest transition, and this is probably the strangest kaiju movie. So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about?
I mean, you call this the strangest kaiju movie as if its sequel doesn't exist
Oh, that's true, but we don't have to talk about the sequel
yet.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to talk about the production first, or do you want to talk about the movie? How do you want to do this, Rex?
Oh, let's go a little bit of production context. So last time we talked about, when we were talking about Gappa, we talked about the kaiju boom of around like 1965 or 66-ish was when it started.
Yes, I mean, in theory, so technically speaking, I would say it started in 1966 when you had Toho producing Ebra, Horror of the Deep, War of the Gargantuas,
Gargantuas, and Ultra Q started, Ultra Q and Ultraman.
And Ambassador Magma, which was the first color tokusatsu show.
Yeah.
You had Daimajin, you had 3 Daimajin films that year.
Oh, Jesus, that's right. They did all those in 1 year, right?
Mm-hmm. And it was Barugon.
That's insane, man.
Daiei was pretty quick with their productions.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy to me that they did all 3 films in 1 year.
Yeah. So with 1966, like that interest in creating kaiju on both the theatrical screens and television screens became more popular.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, with Ultra Q, Ambassador Magma, and Ultraman specifically, you were starting to see catering towards children. That's not to say that Ebra Horror of the Deep...
And the rise of television.
Yes. That's not to say that Ebra Horror of the Deep, Barugon, and Gargantuas weren't children's movies because they were still, children-based. But they do still have mature themes and mature sequences in them. Yeah. And even Ultra Q was a little more mature than your Ultraman or Ambassador Magma.
Yeah, I mean, Ultra Q, I feel, is more geared toward general audiences rather than children specifically.
Right.
Whereas Ultraman actually makes more of an attempt to appeal to that audience.
Right. And with Daimajin, that was definitely a little more of your mature audiences, more into those samurai
that's going
films
for the Chambara audience, really.
Yeah. So 1966 was the beginning of this kaiju boom. And then in 1967, you also had Toei's The Magic Serpents and Toei's Red Shadow series, which featured a few kaiju.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1967, you had Gamera vs. Gaius. You had the conclusion of Ultraman. You had Ultra 7, Gappa, the Triphibian Monster, King Kong Escapes, Son of Godzilla. You had an Ultraman compilation movie. You had the Red Shadow compilation movie, Ninja Scope. Monster Prince, which was a Toei television show. Giant Robo, Kaiju Buska. And then you also had Toei's co-production, Yongri, Monster from the Deep. And then you also had a film from Shochiku.
Yeah.
which is the X from outer space. And since, history has passed, 1967 is the only year that every major studio in Japan produced a kaiju movie and released it that year.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't think because Nikatsu would only do Death Kappa.
And was there one other film you mentioned last time, or
it was pre-Gappa.
Yep. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember its name, but I know what you're talking about.
I mean, Robo Geisha had a giant mech in it that was men in suits, which Nikatsu co-produced.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that's really about it. So Nikatsu really stopped. Shochiku would produce or co-produce a sequel to Monster X Strikes Back in 2008?
Yeah. And
then Toei, Shochiku also would end up doing What to Do with the Dead Kaiju with Toei in 2021. Daiei also stopped besides their Heisei Gamera trilogy, Gamera the Brave.
And they would proceed to die.
This is true. Eventually becoming Katakawa.
They really died.
Stop.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that was a horrible joke.
It came to me,
Really and honestly, since then, the only studios that have been producing kaiju content frequently enough would be Toho and Tsuburaya. I guess you could also throw in Toei with like their Sentai stuff.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes the Sentai stuff,
Kaiju too, and all that.
Mm-hmm. But even then, like the Sentai stuff doesn't always necessarily have a kaiju. Sometimes it's.
Hey, they produced Ultraman vs. Kamen Rider, so co-produced that.
This is true. So, really and honestly, since 1967, like nothing like that has happened.
Yeah.
Nikatsu's like return to the genre. I don't believe anybody else produced a kaiju film in 2010. Toho certainly didn't, and Shochiku didn't, and Toei probably did with the Sentai film, and Tsuburaya did. Was that Mega Monster Battle, or was that?
No, it was Ultraman Zero.
Okay, so like that's
Revenge
probably
of Belial,
that's probably the closest you're gonna get is a Sentai movie.
Maybe they had a Kaiju and a Kamen Rider film too. Maybe. Because occasionally they do show up.
So, this is a pretty big year. 67 is very historical for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
To be more specific, this film came out in March 25th of 1967. So production started in late 1966. They came up with the monster and the script they finished designing the monster and the script in 1967 or 1966, specifically in December, where they did the announcement.
Yeah.
They didn't have
a name yet, I don't think, for Gyalala.
I don't think they had the name, because originally the name was going to be Demigon. I think
it went
Demora.
through a couple. Yeah, Demora. There was Demos, I think.
Yes. And then even at one point it was supposed.
Oh, you go first.
I was going to say at one point they were going to even just have a giant plant be the kaiju, which I wonder if that's partially influenced by the Ultraman episode with Greenmons.
I mean, it could be the Ultra Q episode with the Mammoth Plant as well.
This is true. So I would wonder if it's one of those, because I remember when I was doing my research, I believe it was the producer, or it might have been the writer, specifically said they wanted to do something different from the Daiei Toho films.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they took influence from Ultraman. I feel like it's pretty obvious they did. In this movie, it definitely feels like an Ultraman episode as a movie without Ultraman.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I was just going to mention that the name for Gyalala came about from a naming event similar to how Manila was actually named that same year for Son of Godzilla.
Mm-hmm. And like Jet Jaguar as well. And there's a few others that I think they did that with. what I think one of the most interesting aspects is Shochiku. I mean, Shochiku did beat Nikatsu by about 5 months, but Shochiku is the second oldest studio in Japan. And considering that it took them this long to produce a kaiju movie, I thought was pretty interesting, just in general.
I mean, I think it's interesting that both films came out almost exactly at the same time, like split apart by like about less than a month, I think.
Which one?
Gappa and X from Outer Space. They're only like a month apart in release date.
Oh, they are. April 22nd.
X from Outer Space came out in March 25th. Yeah.
Yep, March 25th, and Gappa was April 22nd. So
yeah, and
interesting.
This film actually had a fair few of the people that special effects team that worked on Gappa as well, and similarly to Gappa as well. I believe the Japanese government, was actually involved in the production budget.
Yes, and
I don't think the production budget, or at least the budget they gave, was as much as Gappa's total budget. But you did say last time that only like 10% of Gappa's budget was actually used for the film. So
yes, the actual budget for X from Outer Space was 150 million yen.
Yeah.
Whereas Gappa's total budget was...
Wasn't it like 500 million yen or something that you said?
So in US dollars, it was $1.4 million, which is definitely way more than 500 million yen. Mm-hmm. So Gappa definitely had a larger budget. Granted, I think Nikatsu, was a little more popular at the time as well.
Possibly.
But yeah, no, Shochiku made the film in hopes of US distribution, especially.
Yeah.
It was part of kind of the push to get Japanese products out into the world, which that association that worked for that stuff are the ones that helped back X from Outer Space, which unfortunately didn't really work out. It went straight to television in the US in 1968 by American. Happens. It does. And, it happened very frequently at this time because the kaiju boom in America had kind of died down.
I mean, pretty much all of the films of like the kaiju boom that came out in '67, like went pretty much straight to TV.
Right. Yeah, because American International was no longer doing the theatrical releases, really, besides Destroy All Monsters and Hedorah, like the main Godzilla titles they got.
Yeah.
Everything else went straight to television. Gappa did, X from Outer Space. So, really, the only films from 1966 and 67 that were released theatrically were the UPA co-produced ones, which would be Your War of the Gargantuas.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, at this point, kaiju had really demoted down to television in the United States. But apparently American International felt it was necessary to produce a dub, which, as they normally did. So there's actually 2 dubs of this movie that exist. The export dub, which is the only one available now, and the American International dub, which also featured alternate title sequences and about 2 minutes cut from the film, which is just like news reports and whatnot.
Right.
So
they only got 2 minutes.
Right? I'm kind of surprised by that as well. And Shochiku were the ones that also came up with the title The X from Outer Space, which is it's a very science fiction, like 1950s title.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised by that.
I mean, I was surprised to learn that a lot of the special effects crew behind this had worked on Gappa in the same year and were largely Toho staff.
Right. Akira Watanabe was invited to help out a little bit, though I don't think he got credited. From what I understand, a lot of them were still employed at Toho and weren't actually allowed to be working on this film. But I read something about them, like apparently bumping into like some Subaraya stuff or something. Yeah,
to them being missed for a breach of contract or something.
I didn't know that.
I read it somewhere. on like a Japanese source, so translation could be dodgy. To be fair.
I do know that at least the special effects supervisor for this film, Keiji Kawakami, who worked with Tsuburaya on his war films, worked for Shochiku at this point. So he not only did this film, but because of how well this film did, he ended up doing the other 2 more of Shochiku's science fiction films, which would be The Living Skeleton and Genocide.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that was pretty interesting to see that Tsuburaya's reach went, not only to Nikatsu and Toho and Tsuburaya, of course, but it even went to Shochiku.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really establishes that his reach was very, very large in the grand scope of things.
Yeah.
They even in the production here, we brought up that they had Tsuburaya stagehands work on this. They even brought in a scientist to help with the science in the film. Which
I read something on that.
I kind of doubt it, but it's also like kind of funny to think that maybe a scientist worked on this film and said that this stuff was accurate.
I mean, different time, different knowledge, and also how even if everything he like proved or disproved of, how much do you think they listened as well?
This is true. Kind of like Jurassic Park 3, the scientist hated the T-Rex, so he wanted the Spinosaurus to win.
Oh yeah, goofy old Jack Horner.
Gotta love it.
He's an interesting character.
But the only thing I have really left is when the film was coming out, after it came out, a summarized manga, also known as a digest manga, was released by Bisatsu Shonen magazine in August of 1967, and that was done by Takashi Koshiro, who actually did manga adaptations for Ultra Q, Terror of Mechagodzilla, Zone Fighter, and Battle Fever J.
Oh, that's cool. I read that he also did a Barum 1 adaptation too, I think. Mm-hmm. And a Zone Fighter 1, maybe.
So there's a lot of interesting like development before this film and kind of right after this film. It's even like, I will say this before we start talking about it, this film is very well remembered in Japan, which I find kind of interesting.
Huh.
Shochiku still rides off of this movie because following this, even though there would be no sequel, Gulala made appearances in like Bad News Bears Goes to Japan. It's a company called The Ladders. They featured him in a commercial.
Right. Yeah. I mean, stock footage from this film gets used every now and again as well, from what I understand, in various different films. And like even like the year after this, I read they reused the Gulala suit for like a scene in like a musical film as well.
Yeah. And like Tora-san's Forbidden Love featured the stock footage you mentioned, or Too Funny to Fail, which was a documentary. Or there was even a manga called Uso Makoto Yokai Hayuku Mono Gatal. I probably butchered that. Yes, but in the manga, Gulala appears.
Nice. And then, of course, we eventually got a sequel in 2008.
Right, and before that, actually, Kawasaki used him in a episode of the web series. Yeah, Denace Will Definitely Lose Weight, Space Monster Small Advance. So that, it's pretty interesting because, Gulala didn't have a sequel for like 50 years, but it definitely didn't keep the character from not appearing in other stuff.
I mean, he's lucky to have a memorable design.
Yeah. You could say that, to say the least, really.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, do we want to dive in here to the actual film?
Yep.
Alrighty, so I guess we'll start at the beginning and make our way to the end here.
Alrighty.
So right off the bat, I could really tell this film didn't have a budget, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, looking at like our past films that are kaiju related, all of the title sequences were composited together, fade in, fade out, maybe like a pan camera movement. Whereas this film just had cuts to like paintings with all the credits on them.
Funky music.
So is this like a Mexican Japanese song? Because it definitely sounds a lot like the Mexican music I hear when I go eat Mexican food. I was like,
look, man, I don't know. I don't listen to Mexican music, but yeah, I was surprised. I'm like, this is certainly a theme for Gilala.
It definitely doesn't fit.
I'll say this: the film's music is more memorable than Gappa's, but I don't know if that's necessarily a compliment.
This is true because like Gappa really has nothing, and we brought that up.
Gappa has like the theme songs, and that's it. That's the only thing memorable about Gappa's music. I'm not even sure if Gappa has music in like 80% of the film.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't because I did bring up how it was really lacking.
I don't remember that. I don't remember if there was any other music in the film.
So yeah,
whereas this, I definitely remember there being music, and it definitely never fit.
It doesn't, but it definitely fits. I will say, while it doesn't fit the tone of the actual movie, it definitely fits the tone for the writing, which really leads me to not take this film serious at all.
Yeah.
So after our credits and our theme song, we're given a exposition dump by... Well, actually, before we're even given an exposition dump, we're just shown a white scientist landing on a helicopter that he knows how to fly, with some ground crew taking a heavy box out of the helicopter and loading it up. And from here, we're given a little bit of an explanation, how it's important for the mission that's about to happen. And this is where we cut into the base, where we hear the whole plan. So the plan basically is Elon Musk is wanting to send spaceships to Mars to colonize and
right. He wants to put his billboard satellites up finally.
Yes, it's actually very funny how like the problem of this movie is basically what Elon Musk is trying to do. I was like, SpaceX must have been inspired by this. But in all seriousness,
this is where Elon does his research.
Yes, he watches Japanese monster movies, and that's how he comes up with his crazy ideas. They make him rich.
I mean, didn't he like...
He wears a Godzilla shirt in some videos.
Oh, yeah. No. Didn't he base like one of like didn't he give like one of his ships a pointy design or something? Like one of his spaceships a pointy design because of like a joke in a comedy movie about it?
Yes.
Exactly. I rest my case.
But so the story of the problem is this company has sent many spaceships to check out Mars to see if they can colonize it and just, use or refine it for resources. And all of them have gone missing. And all of the crew members have gone missing.
Yeah.
The rocket has just disappeared and nobody has been able to reach contact with it.
Very sad, yes.
I wonder if they might have imploded, but But they're on their final mission and they tell this crew, this is a crew of 4 people. 4 people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how 4 people are supposed to like land on Mars and like research and find out all this info, but 4 people. And one of them's American and the rest are Japanese.
Yep.
They're told, you have the safest ship we've ever made. We've focused mostly on safety. Nothing will go wrong. That means everything will go wrong. So they're essentially told that this is going to be a research mission to see what happened to the spaceships and the crew and to get to Mars.
Yeah.
And then they're told to lift off. And from here, we get 50 minutes of space travel.
Yep. Very, very exciting. Very.
Also, I don't know about you, but my copy, which is the official release, felt very much like messed up. Like it looked like the print they used was kind of crushing the image together. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, I noticed that. I actually noticed that. It looked like it looked slightly squashed.
Yes.
The entire movie. And even the audio, I mean, I can't tell if it's just the film has bad sound design or if it's like this transfer of the movie just has poor audio. I can't tell which is which, but the audio in this film is not great either way.
Did you watch the English dub or the Japanese audio?
Japanese audio.
Okay, so I watched the English dub, and I had the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my television was at, like, 80 on volume, so I could try to understand everything. And I thought it was just because, I mean, like, in War in Space, the English dub for that's just in such poor, like, quality that they just, you know, what you get's what you get. I thought maybe it's just the export dub was not well kept for decades, and this is what we get.
Mm.
Because, like, some of the audio just sounded, like, muddy, and some of it just, you know, it was fine, or it was just
some
too
of it's
quiet.
also just bad sound design, I think, as well, on the film's part. Because, like, for example, when the monster goes on a rampage, there's, like, it looks like there's sound effects missing. There's sound effects missing in certain parts, and even when, like, they have the sounds for, like, buildings being destroyed, which is some of the sounds that do go missing, I should mention. But, like, the actual building destruction sounds, it sounds like Lego bricks.
I feel like I remember hearing that too, yeah.
It's really, really weak sound design for the most part.
100%. And I'm going to complain about that a little later too. But from here, we're kind of introduced to our characters as they're walking to their
alleged
spacecraft. Alleged characters. So here's the thing. Right off the bat, with all of their interactions, I could tell that this cast had no chemistry. This cast did not work well at all. Like, it just felt weird from the get-go. Nobody seemed to really...
Midway through the movie, they replace, like, the doctor character with, like, this...
German
like,
character.
white dude, yeah. And all that guy does is complain while he's on the ship, and then he leaves the movie and is not mentioned again. He had no relevance at all. And
I could tell right off the bat that this movie was not going to be able to develop its characters. You have your main four characters are the captain, who's all serious and knows everything. Your doctor, who's supposed to be this charismatic, cool guy. Your biologist, who's too cool for school, Peggy Neal.
Yeah. And
then you have your communications officer, which is supposed to be the comedic relief of the movie.
Right, yeah.
And you get all of this right away with their entry, because the way they shoot it, they have their instructor, or like the lieutenant or the commander who's giving the brief about what their mission is. While he's doing it, the camera cuts and does this, it would be a tracking shot. No, it's not a tracking. I think it's a truck shot. Well, it's a dolly shot. So the camera, I'm trying to remember if it cuts or if it actually moves. I think it cuts. No, it moves. It moves. So the camera starts with the captain, and it's very well established that, like, he's the military guy. He knows everything right off the bat with how the instructor talks to them and how the actor portrays the character. And then it moves to the biologist, Peggy Neal, who is, like, ignoring. And then she just looks up, and as she's there, and I was trying to figure out what was going on in her head, but in the film, you can see that her eyebrow raises, and she gets this slight grin of, like, yeah, I'm doing this. And And I don't know if that's her acting or if she's like, yeah, I know what you're saying, 100%. Because I imagine they did what Toho did, which was film in Japanese and English.
Yeah, probably.
Were they Japanese or English in the audio for the Japanese version?
They were dubbed over with Japanese actors.
So, so she was...
The other white people.
So she was definitely speaking in English. So she probably had difficulty understanding everything. So she was just trying to act like she knew what he was saying. I would imagine.
Maybe.
And then it goes to our scientist who's very charismatic and like looks like he's going to be I would argue he would be like the main character if that was what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to our communications officer, and he's got like this big grin, and he's like he's so large, like personality wise, that he takes up the whole room. And it's like, okay, we've got all of our cliched characters here.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that half of our characters are doctors. It's like, yep. This is like cliched Showa 1960s kaiju. Everybody's a professor, doctor, or
just sci-fi in general, not even just kaiju.
Yeah. Or military officer. So right off the bat, we're basically given exactly how this film's going to run for the rest of the movie.
Yep.
Except we're also introduced to the fact that our actors don't have any chemistry and don't really know what they're doing because they have been given a horrible script.
Mm-hmm.
So they get on the spaceship and they're launched into space.
Mm-hmm.
And while they're in space, we get a classic trope of the women know nothing, and they're told to be quiet and sit down. Very, very much like 50s and 60s tropes.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to zero gravity as a stereotypical, like something just starts floating. And somehow they have anti-gravity. Like, I swear to God, this spaceship has everything just for plot convenience.
Look, it's 60s sci-fi. I'll give it a pass on that.
Because what happens is, so our communications officer, the comedic relief, lets go of his clipboard, and it starts floating. And people are going to get up and like get it as they're like flying off into space. And you know, you would think that if you're still like being jettisoned into space and you have zero gravity, you're not going to get up. But Peggy Neal's character is about to before I believe it's the captain says, hold on, wait a minute, stop. And then he just turns a knob and anti-gravity exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody gets up after that and they just roam around.
Mm-hmm.
And while they're on their journey, it cuts back and forth to the base where our main white scientist and the Japanese scientist are talking at the base,
and they're just speculating about like the UFOs,
right? Because they also introduce the concept of UFOs,
mm-hmm.
which during these like I guess they're, what would those be called, the intercut sequences of the scientists, they like to put space in front of everything. They're like space science, space emergency. And I'm like, man, this is like the pinnacle of Showa era writing and characters and everything. Like, space titanium. You mean it's from outer space? Except it's space science. It's different from Earth science. It's space science. And emergencies in space are different from emergencies on Earth. So they're space emergencies. I love the writing in this movie. Like, it's so great.
Yeah. Yeah. You can be the lone lover of it.
So
I mean, I don't even think they had those like space science and all that sort of wording in the subtitles I watched.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. Also, I should add that
just flat dialogue.
Oh. Well, the export dub that I watched, everybody has like a British or Australian accent.
Oh boy.
Or a German accent. So everybody has accents in the movie. And I'm like, Okay. Because back in the day when they were doing export dubs, a lot of the dub companies would hire people to do like foreign accents. So when they came to America, they'd sound foreign just to add like the fact that these aren't people from America. I don't know why.
It's
but
called
like,
racism.
yeah, pretty much. But they would do like British accents, Australian accents, German accents to cover the dialogue and still make it sound foreign to American audiences. And if I remember correctly, Rex, for the next like 25 or like 10 minutes, it's just them traveling in space, like just talking.
Yeah, nothing really happens, let alone anything interesting. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the first like 30 or so minutes of this movie, nothing interesting is happening.
Well, so while they're in space, the doctor suddenly gets sick. Why?
Yeah.
We don't know. What happens? Practically nothing. But it forces
It has
them...
no consequence outside of that forcing them to go to
the moon base,
meeting up with a girl named Michiko, who I should mention is working alongside the man, the myth, the legend, Hiroshi Fujioka, a.k.a. Kamen Rider.
And the introduction to the German scientist.
Yeah, who disappears after like 20 minutes later anyways.
Yeah, and so while they're on the moon base, they do like space play and dancing, which was pretty funny, but I was like, that's aesthetically nice. Little fun
and this
moment
is where
there.
we introduce our love triangle in heavy quotation marks. Very heavy quotation marks, because I didn't realize it was a love triangle until the very last scene of the movie.
Yes, and I want to talk about that last scene when we get there, because it is the dumbest way to conclude a movie. So while they're here, though, we're introduced to a very much soundstage moon base.
Yeah.
Unlike the Toho films of the 1960s that went into space and they had bases like Astro Monster and Industrial Monsters and whatnot, this film, they don't really try to make it look like it's a space station. It definitely looks like a typical soundstage.
I mean, I feel the issue with a lot of the sets on this movie is that they just feel empty. Like, there's nothing really in the middle of everything. They're all just... They've got, like, the walls and, like, the doors are decent enough, but there's just nothing in between to make it really feel like an actual place.
Right. No, and even like all the characters that are in this moon base are very like... So I kind of got some Star Trek vibes from this movie, and I wonder if Star Trek was partially what influenced it.
Maybe?
But in Star Trek on the Enterprise, they made it very clear that every actor had to be doing something while filming on the Enterprise. So people who are walking by are like talking to somebody, or they're like, they have notebooks, or they're doing something. Everybody's doing something. I mean, sometimes they're dressed like they're going to a beach. It's funny, but like there's an obvious, like, people are doing stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas in this one, there's a lot of people just standing around talking, doing nothing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And one thing I will say is there's a sequence where two of our male characters are bathing together.
I mean, that's pretty normal in Japan.
This is true. In a very tiny bathing corner. It's like this little cutout in the wall. Huh?
I'm pretty sure it's an onsen.
Okay, that makes sense. But the water, they're like, oh, it's so nice to be in water. And they say, well, it's not actually real. It's pulled from the rocks, which is scientifically accurate because rocks do hold water. But they explain how it's man-made.
Is this the one scene where the scientist was actually involved?
Probably. But what's cool is the water's actually green. Like they went out of their way to make the water not look like actual water. Which was a nice little detail. But I mean, that little detail doesn't really do anything to save the rest of this film.
Yeah. It's nice that they put one detail in, though.
Yes. So from here, they basically like get ready to go back on
the other details.
Yeah.
Especially in the script.
And this is where the script gets bad. I feel like at this point it's subpar, but I feel like at this point, once they leave again, that's when it gets bad. So after this, I mean, there's some setup for the love triangle that doesn't really go anywhere.
There's barely any setup.
I mean, so
the setup is like they call when they're arriving at the moon base. They call like the Japanese love interest Michiko and the captain, and like she kind of just looks away from the captain, and I guess Peggy Neal's character. I guess she was also looking away from. I guess.
See, they don't really explain how the whole
they don't
video
really
conferencing
establish it at all.
Yeah,
it's
all by looks.
That there is some that Michiko and the Captain Sano have some sort of relationship, and that's it. That's all the development to this love triangle that you're getting up until the ending. Right.
And like there's a dinner sequence when they first arrive that kind of removes all of that tension.
Yeah.
Though there is this thing where all the characters that we're following seem to want to flirt with Peggy Neal.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
It's established at the beginning where literally all three of the guys hit on her.
Yeah.
And then there's some other, like, it's obvious she's supposed to be the American girl that's blonde and is like the perfect image that every guy falls for. That's kind of what I'm getting as her like stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really work because it doesn't really go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And she does do a little flirting back. But it's all like in fun. It's like in a flirty, funny nature.
Yeah.
But towards the end of their stay at the moon base, the doctor at the moon base says that our main doctor character can't go back on the ship because he has to recuperate and that he cannot go with them. So they get orders from Earth Control to put him on instead, right?
Yeah.
Or was it,
Put Dr. Stein on.
Yes. And may I say it's funny that his name's Dr. Stein and he's German?
Wow, it's almost like it might be a German name.
Well, I was thinking Frankenstein.
I know, but like, it's a German name.
This is true, but could they pick any, like, a more stereotypical name?
I don't know, man. Do you want Dr. McDonald from Gappa to come back?
I mean, he might have more time in the movie, more development. But
are any of these really characters in Dr. McDonald and Dr. Stein? I mean, they both have probably like an equal amount of screen time, so.
Well, to be fair, from here in, Dr. Stein does not shut up.
Yeah.
He starts complaining because he doesn't want to go on the ship, and then they force him onto the ship, and as they're traveling through space, all he does is complain because he can't eat the food, he can't go see his wife, there's XYZ. All he does is complain. He does not shut up. He is highly obnoxious and really, really, really annoying.
Yeah.
We also forgot to bring up that there's a spaceship before they go to the moon base.
Yeah. It's there.
But I will say it looks oddly like the Keylok spaceships.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like the Keylok, and maybe not in design, but it kind of reminded me a little bit of the Viras. The Viras aliens a little with the yellow.
Little bit, yeah. So that's the reason why the spacecraft had to make an emergency landing on the moon base, is because the spaceship did something to make power go out, right? It jammed up their communication.
Yeah, it did have a communication issue.
So they had to
Yeah.
make a pit stop at the moon base.
Yeah.
And while they're out and Dr. Stein's nonstop complaining, it appears again and shuts off their power, communications lost, and they
and pulls them in as well.
It pulls them in, their lights go out, and Dr. Stein's like, we gotta get out of here, like
Captain's like, nah, we're just gonna be wasting fuel. We don't have enough to get back, or won't. It's worthless.
It is. And following this, there's also a meteor shower.
It's like, I think I was under the impression it was like the spore things that the spaceship is just shooting at them.
Well, in the in the export dub, they say, "Do you hear that? It's a meteor shower."
They said something like that in the sub as well, I believe.
Which I might add, there's no way sound can travel in space. So, in space, no one can hear you scream.
Except when the aliens screamed in that movie.
This is true.
In space.
So, I don't know how they could hear meteorites, but one hits their spaceship and creates a hole the size of like a baseball.
Yeah.
And it does what happened in Alien, where suddenly everything's like flying around and it becomes like this air suction porthole. And just like in Alien Resurrection, something, in this case, it's our comedic relief, is pulled into the hole. And I'm sitting there thinking, are they really going to have him like fly through the tiny hole and that's the end of this character? But nope. He gets stuck there. It does cut to like his costume like going into the hole, but they hit a button and suddenly it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch the context behind what button they hit that like saved their air and gravity?
I'm gonna be honest, I was struggling to keep my eyes open at this point in the movie.
That was me later on.
This was a genuine struggle, like this first 45 minutes.
So like, I don't like they didn't cover it. They didn't cover the hole until later, but they hit a button and it made it so gravity came back, the air came back, and they were suddenly fine.
Yeah.
It didn't make much sense, but it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the meteor shower, they had to go off course, and so they're off course. They have no way of communicating. Their power's out, the light's out. They hit a button,
and there's a bunch of spores on the back of their spaceship.
Yes, from the spacecraft.
Yes.
So they go out of the spaceship after they repair the hole, and they find the spores and everything that's like on their spaceship.
Yeah.
And they take 2 samples and they go back inside. They have communication. They're talking with ground control and whatnot. And that's when they find out they have to have more fuel to get back. So from here, the love interest, in air quotes, requests to be sent to bring them more fuel. So once they find the location, they send off a ship to bring the power, which we later find out is nuclear energy.
I mean, we knew from the start it was powered by, like, nuclear fuel.
And so later on in the film, they put up a Geiger counter to it, and it's already radioactive. So it's irradiating radiation off of it. Every person in this movie is going to die of cancer. Like, it's not even like, oh, well, it's a giant monster. It's quite literally they have radiation, and it's in their passenger seat of their personal helicopter. They're literally carrying it into a car. It's like, that's not how this works.
No, it's 100% safe, man.
I will say, though, during the whole rescue sequence, I guess you could call it, there's this purple flame that comes out of the rescue ship that looks really nice. And this all is done, like, it's got the blue space background with the wire hanging spacecrafts, like your typical, like, Toho film. It looks pretty nice.
It's okay.
I do enjoy a good Toho science fiction space opera movie. But this is not that.
I don't think the look of this movie ever exceeds okay at best.
Yeah, I mean it's very much not of its time. It's definitely like I would put this more in the 50s when it comes to look. And just like
it's
effects.
definitely not as impressive as, say, what Toho or even Nikatsu was doing with Gappa.
Correct.
Where I thought Gappa had some surprisingly really good shot composition and all that for like the drama unit in particular.
Yes.
And even like the special effects stuff was decent, I'd say. And it wasn't always the best, but you know, there was still some striking shots here and there.
Right. It was definitely on par with what Daiei was doing, at least.
Yeah, pretty much. Or like if not, like very close behind at worst.
So, you know, it's a little disheartening, but it was also nice to just be like, yeah, I'm definitely watching a like classic Japanese science fiction film. Which, to be fair, up until this point, no kaiju. This is just a science fiction space opera.
But not a very interesting one.
No. So from here, this is where the script decides to not even really be coherent. At least in my, like, maybe it was I was zoning out and, like, completely missing stuff. But from here on out, the script just jumps around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you got that, but from here in, like, the script is not coherent.
I mean, I was just happy that something was happening, man.
So our main characters go back to the moon base. They pick up the professor, or the doctor. They go back to the Earth.
Yeah.
They're all, like, being debriefed, and they are going to, like, celebrate, even though they did nothing. Like, they found the spaceship, but it disappeared. They never went to Mars. They never found any of the spacecraft or the people.
I mean, they say that they're only celebrating because they got, like, the spore things.
Right. Which are being researched at this Earth base. The love interest comes to Earth as well. And as they're, like, about to go to dinner, I'm guessing, like, it looked like they were going to go to a Japanese...
Right, yeah, they were in, like, a restaurant-type area.
Yeah.
Or even, like, it almost looked like a hotel lobby, or more than a restaurant, really.
So, prior to them doing that, they find out that one of their... They have two spores. One of them's disappeared. The other one has not. They don't know why, but it's gone.
And there's a mysterious chicken claw print on the ground.
Yes. And when they're going to the restaurant, suddenly they see these lights. And they look, and it's over this hilltop. And may I say, this sequence is pretty cool. This is a pretty cool entry. The lighting, the foreground, the background, like the whole setup, it looks really cool. Yeah. This is where Gulala is introduced, which is a very cool intro. Like this, I would say this beats Gappa's intro.
I mean, if we're talking about like Gappa's first scene where it's just like the lights in the water, sure. No, but I'm
talking about like full reveal, like in the cave. I'd put this slightly above that one.
I don't know. I really like Gappa's reveal in the cave, even though the scare it's not great with like the scale. I just think it's like I think they're really cool shots.
I mean, fair. I feel like both have their warrants and their merits.
Both are good, I'd say.
But here's the problem. This movie is 88 minutes long. It's an hour and 28 minutes.
Yep.
This is 48 minutes into this movie. So we are over halfway into this movie. We've had two sequences with the spaceship and like two sequences with the spores.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just now getting the first appearance of Gulala.
Mm-hmm.
And I can safely say up until this point, this movie is crazy boring. I was so done. Like
I was struggling, man. I actually had to end up pausing the movie, and due to various reasons, I didn't get to continue watching it until like when I woke up this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I'm almost relieved because I don't know if I would have been able to make it to that 45-minute mark, man, let alone the hour 28 mark without that, like, 10-hour break.
So in my notes, I actually wrote, like, as I'm watching the movie, I write my notes, and I did, like, this whole, like, line thing to represent from, like, the beginning of my notes to this point, and I put pretty boring until Gulala is here.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason it wasn't boring was because the intro was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, the film becomes quite literally monster on the loose. We got to stop him.
Yeah.
And it does not stop that idea. From this point on, they moved from...
I'd argue the script is even more paper thin than Gappa's script was.
It absolutely is, because at this point, they clearly don't have a budget, because from this point on, they just jump around. So they go back to the military, or to the Earth base. They establish that they need to try and figure out how to destroy the monster and stop it before it destroys things. And then it quite literally, from that sequence, like not even 5 minutes later, cuts to Gulala in the broad daylight, just superimposed, running through the streets of a city. Yeah. And it looks awful. It is very rough.
The composite shots in this movie. Oh my god, they are so rough.
And I was like, ooh, this is not good.
Yeah.
And
there's
this
like
is
maybe one that is passable. And that's like the main shot of Gulala being through this in the city, and then there's like a composite of like a couple people, like, or a bunch of people like running away.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one that I'm like, okay, this isn't terrible.
This is on par with Ultraman of this time.
Sure. I don't know. I'd maybe put it a bit below that, but
well, so from here in, the movie just cuts from Gulala destroying stuff to people talking. Gulala destroying stuff, people talking. It's obvious Shochiku had not made a kaiju movie, because they didn't know how to deal with the kaiju once the kaiju was introduced.
Mm-hmm.
And from here on out, it becomes very rough. The editing is just jumpy in general.
Yeah.
So following this, there's a board meeting, like a meeting of all the important people in Japan's government, and they're talking to our main characters, specifically the captain, about what they should do. And the captain asks Peggy Neal's character to explain something. And instead of her just getting up and the camera like moving up a little bit and following her, it jumps to a completely different angle and her getting up and walking. And I'm like, this, and it's not even like an opposite side angle. It's the same side as the shot before it.
Yeah.
But it's cutting the captain out and it's just her on screen. And this was where I was like, oh God. Like I can forgive jump cuts for special effects sequences, like the clipboard jumping to become not in his hand and then become like a wireworks effect. I can forgive that because that's what they had to do. But that's not like there's no compositing. It's just quite literally they moved the camera closer to her and they said, start it. It looks awful. And from here on out, they're like, we've tried everything to destroy Gulala, but we haven't seen that. There's been no like dogfights. There's been no like tanks. There's been nothing. There is no evidence of them attacking Gulala. And then guess what? The next sequence is them attacking Gulala with basic tanks after saying, we've tried everything. There's nothing that will work. And I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we here? What is the context behind this? And so pretty much, so this is where I started to kind of phase out because I was so confused by why we were jumping around. So Rex, can you kind of pick up here a little bit? My next note isn't for like a few minutes in the movie. I want to say there's like a conversation about how to destroy Gulala, and that's where they're like,
they have quite a few of those. As you said, it just keeps like cutting back and forth, and like, I remember the captain, Peggy Neal, and all them go back into space. They go back to the moon base. I think it was to like they need to use the sample they still have to, and they need it to create like some sort of material that's like called gilanium.
Aluminum, gulaluminium,
something like that.
Which is a stupid name. It's awful.
Yeah.
It's like stroke in the word.
Yeah. It was very clever of them to put the name of the kaiju in the element name. Thank you, movie.
Not even like Element X. Even though that was taken. Well, granted, actually, no. It wasn't taken at this time.
Huh.
They could have done Element X.
But yeah, I guess the tension, the alleged tension in this movie is just will the crew be able to get back to Earth before Gilala just destroys everything, I guess? Also, it turns into a giant red glowing ball for some reason.
I was like, Ultraman?
Yeah.
And the red ball, like, as it flies over everything, it, like, blows it all up.
Yeah.
And during all of the rampages in every sequence Gulala is in, he does not shut up. He's like Dr. Stein. He does not stop roaring. His roaring does not stop.
Yeah, but at least I want to look at Gilala. I don't care about Dr. Stein. Gilala's
This is true.
Cool.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a subtle Gyra roar at the end of Gulala's roar? At some moments?
I don't remember. All I remember is like the goat sound thing it's making.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did sample Gyra's roar for the ending of part of it.
Maybe. I don't know, man. I mean, I haven't seen War of the Gargantua, so...
Oh, you poor thing.
Yeah, it's like... look, man, it's like one of the only Toho Kaiju sci-fi films I still need to see.
Okay. Well, that's... We should cover that on the podcast soon.
Hopefully. That'd be nice.
So, as I brought up earlier, this movie's trying to not make a Toho or Daiei film. And clearly, the thing that I think Shochiku was trying to do is try to make a movie that doesn't have an interesting story or intriguing characters. Because that's what Toho and Daiei have that Shochiku does not.
Yeah.
Like, and from, like, so they're at the moon base, they get it, they come back. During this whole time, Gulala's just fighting and destroying everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they come back to the Earth base, and they have it, and they're like making more of it. I'm guessing, like they're making it a weapon to use against Gulala.
Yeah, what they end up doing with it at the end is like lacing like jet missiles or something with it.
Mm-hmm. But as they're doing it, Gulala finally makes it to the Earth base because, and this is the whole plot point behind what Gulala is doing. Gulala is going to any power plant and destroying it and taking its energy.
Yeah. So
he absorbs radiation, kind of like Godzilla, but he doesn't have the fins. He's just absorbing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he can tell there's nuclear energy at the Earth base, so he goes there first.
Yeah. Can I point out it was pretty funny how the dialogue in this movie, they talk about what like the foreign countries are doing and thinking of the matter, and I thought it was really funny that the US is very hesitant on using A-bombs.
I didn't even realize that.
This is like the one movie where the US doesn't want to blow up Japan again. Well,
it's obvious that in like the fact that half this crew is like the white people in Japan, like all the white people in Japan. It's very obvious this movie was supposed to like cater to American audiences.
I mean, yeah, but I still find it really funny.
Yeah, it's the one time, like you said, the one time. And so Gulala eventually gets to the Earth base, and it's like, oh, here we are. Everything's screwed. We're going to die unless we can get it done. And out of nowhere, again, like the editing and the story of this movie has fallen apart. You watch this movie and you watch the plot and characters and story and writing fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, the other love interest, who isn't Peggy Neal, runs over to our captain and like the scientist and says, Lisa's in trouble. So somehow Lisa was, and we don't get context behind what happened here or why they're in this situation. But Lisa has been...
I mean, it's just that the lab exploded. That's about all the context.
But why are they there? We didn't see them go in there, did we not?
Look, man, this movie, okay?
So my point's proven. We literally have no context for why this happened, but Lisa's now pinned under a water tower?
I don't know, man.
And she's
We
stuck.
just need an excuse for there to be, like, for our main characters to be in danger.
But here's the thing. They focus on it for about a minute, and Gulala appears, and then suddenly she's free. Like, we don't even see her get out of it. It's just, Gulala's here. Time to move on to the next problem. And, like, Lisa's fine. She's being catered to by the other love interest character, and the jets are off to shoot Gulala.
Yeah.
And this
And
is
then,
where
like,
we have...
Tano and one of the other characters are taking, like, the nuclear fuel, and were they trying to distract Gulala, or...
I think so. I mean, Gulala ends up, like, demolishing the base entirely.
Yeah.
But
I think they were just trying to lure it away to get everyone else survive safely.
Right, because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, they do make it so it's just emergency personnel only. Like the required people to be there to like get it solved, and that's it. And then, I mean, the death for Gulala, so like it's missiles covered in gulaminium.
Yeah.
Gulaminium. And it's a pretty gruesome death. Like, it's like this white foam that just covers Gulala and slowly, like, it makes him tiny, but like,
Yeah.
it's slowly, it looks like it's just slowly, like, making him, like, dissolve, which is kind of, it's pretty gruesome. Kind of reminds me of the death of Youngari, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, so then he just goes small, and they put him back into the capsule that definitely kept the specimen safe beforehand, you know?
And then they pull a Gamera.
Oh yeah, they shoot it off into space, that's right.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was supposed to be sequel bait or what, but it clearly didn't work.
And then we get the best scene of the movie.
Yeah, so, okay. We were wrapping things up in the film, and Peggy Neal's character is talking to another character, and she says, Gulala taught me something, and that's, was it other people love other people? Or something like that?
Yeah, it's something about, I need to, in the dub, I think it's something about, like, I need to know my place, and it's kind of, it kind of seems to be insinuating that mixed race couples, big no-no.
Right. Well, in Japan at the time, that was a big no-no.
Yeah.
In Japan at the time, it was very much frowned upon. I think nowadays that's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this film definitely is dated for the mid 60s.
I mean, I don't think that's what they say in the Japanese version. At least in the subtitles, she's just like, Gulala taught me like a valuable lesson. Thanks to him, I realized, and it's like, there's someone else that loves Sano more than I will.
And that's...
So like, what was the lesson there? How did Gulala teach you that?
Right. How is this relevant? Why is it relevant? Mm-hmm. Who do we care about? Nobody.
Yeah, I didn't even realize before this point that Peggy Neal was supposed to be in love with the captain.
I had an idea,
I had no clue.
I had an idea, but I wasn't for certain. Like, it wasn't really obvious.
God, I had no clue.
So, and with that, the movie's over.
Thank God.
Yes, this movie, like, God, this was hard to sit through. So this movie is actually really well regarded and remembered. Everybody likes to say that it's a fun, silly, weird movie. In all the right ways.
This is literally okay, look, this is the way I see this movie is this is the Japanese Godzilla or Gamera film this is the Japanese Godzilla film everyone mocks. This is the stereotype. You've got bad flat characters, cheesy monster action, mediocre to lackluster special effects, poor writing, all that sort of deal. That's how I see this film.
So let's real quick. Let's talk about the kaiju design. A lot of people like Gulala's design because of how like kooky and weird it is.
It's the only interesting part of the movie.
I would. Okay, I would agree with you.
Because like I like Gulala's design. I think it's undoubtedly the most memorable part of it. I think most people can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a memorable design. It's definitely a very 60s or 50s, 60s sci-fi monster design.
Right.
And for that, as goofy as it is, it works. I think it's more interesting and memorable than say Gappa's design, which Gappa's okay, but like I don't think it's a great design, Gappa.
Right.
And the baby Gappas suck.
So I got a little bit more facts because I feel like you summarized Gulala pretty well, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought up how Gulala and Gappa were supposedly supposed to have a versus movie in the 90s, but that's not actually true. But in the 90s, specifically 95 and 96, Shochiku was planning to remake The X from Outer Space. There was a treatment by Moriyoshi Ichikawa, and they had proposed to director Kazuyuki Izuta to be the director, but it never materialized. Eventually, there was a sequel made by Minoru Kawasaki, Monster X Strikes Back: Attack the G8 Summit.
Mm-hmm.
But
starring
since then,
Takeshi.
Mm-hmm. But there was since then there's a rights issue, so nobody really knows who owns the character of Gulala. And because of that, there's like an issue releasing the Minoru Kawasaki film.
Which I feel is weird if this film can get released, but
to be fair, this was released like 2015, 2016 by Criterion, if I remember correctly.
I think it was 2012, the set.
Oh.
But like even still, it's still on the movie's still on like HBO Max and all that.
This is true. Well, that's probably because Criterion just has held the rights for so long.
I mean, maybe, but like the commercial, the latest commercial was from like 2008 or 9. So
right, it was like following or right before the Monster X Strikes Back movie.
It would have been like just following, probably.
So it's really weird that they can't touch the sequel to this movie because of rights problems.
Yeah,
but I don't really know why. It's one of those
neither
kaiju.
of us are legal experts, so
this is true. It's one of those weird copyright conundrums in the kaiju genre. Copyright conundrums, kaiju copyright conundrums. That's going to be a mini show because Lord knows there's a ton of those in this genre. So it's. I would be interested to see a sequel, or well, I guess we do have a sequel, like a remake or something.
I mean, I'd like to see Gulala again because, like, I do like this design. As goofy as it is, as much as he is a very of the time design, I like him. You know,
he's fun. He's definitely fun. I personally think I'd put if I had to compare Gappa and this thing, I feel like the adult Gappas look cooler than Gulala.
I mean, Gilala's design, it's not really cool. It's just fun and memorable.
Right, exactly.
Whereas
I agree with that.
I feel like the Gappas, they're cool, but they're not very remarkable. I think they're the most...
They're not as memorable either.
Yeah, exactly.
Gulala's more memorable, but I think Gappa's cooler.
I prefer Gilala, man.
I mean, fair. I think that's a fair assessment.
Mm-hmm. Shame this movie blows.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, this isn't... I don't understand why... I don't understand why Criterion released this movie. I don't understand why Stuart Galbraith liked this movie. I don't understand why, like, Kevin Derendorf likes... I mean, it's weird and it's kooky and it's clearly 60s, but I feel like there's 100 other kaiju products from the 60s that are better.
This is the epitome, as I said before, this is the epitome of that type of film that gets mocked.
Right. And honestly, I would say if this film was made today, it would be like those very cheaply, awfully looking movies that people don't like. I feel like if this was made today...
Or like a mockbuster.
A little bit. I'm kind of thinking like a Raiga, God of the Sea Monsters movie, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I genuinely believe this is supposed to be a comedic comedy. It's funny because Gappa was supposed to be the satire, and it didn't really feel like the satire, but X from Outer Space is definitely like a satire, it looks like, but it wasn't supposed to be. Like, it's just really weird.
If it's meant to be comedic, the funniest part is A, the monster design, and B, that damn music.
You're not wrong at all. You are not wrong. And I will bring this up for anybody who's like, why are you guys still talking about Gappa? Like, you talked about Gappa last week. In all fairness, Gulala and Gappa get marketed a lot together. Mm-hmm. There's that rumor of the film that was supposed to be produced in the 90s. But in general, Gappa and Gulala are typically marketed together when they're brought up.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, some like screenings in Japan, like screenings like decades later, have done both films as like a double feature.
I feel like they're a good double feature.
Yeah.
I really do. I think The X from Outer Space and Gappa the Trifibian Monster is a great double feature that you would appreciate one more than the other when you do that.
Yeah.
I'm actually really happy our schedule, like we did it this way, because I saw The X from Outer Space many years ago, and I never picked it up again. I understand now why I didn't. But I do remember when I first watched it, I kind of forgot it, like, pretty quickly. And, like, now I understand why. But watching Gappa, which I also hadn't seen in years and kind of forgot as time went on, watching Gappa and then watching this made me appreciate Gappa a lot more.
Oh, definitely. Because Gappa actually had me interested in the first, like, little bit of the movie. Whereas this, I was struggling to stay awake.
Likewise. And I feel like I did fall asleep during my first viewing, too. I feel like that happened. I don't remember, but I feel like that might have happened. And to be honest...
I've now checked out both films either way. As much as I did not enjoy this film very much, I like Gilala.
And I will say...
I'll put myself through hell to see him.
And I will say it's very fitting that Minoru Kawasaki did the sequel to this because, I mean, the original even feels like a Kawasaki film, but I don't want to dive too far into that.
This design is definitely something Kawasaki would love.
Yes. And it kind of reminds me of the structure of, like, Death Kappa. Like, the first, like, 2/3 of the movie is not a kaiju movie. And then the last act is nonstop kaiju, but it's so in your face that it's boring, and you've been waiting so long that it's boring. This and Death Kappa both kind of have a similar story structure, I feel like.
Maybe.
So Do you want me to go ahead and jump into our cast and crew credits?
Yep. Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So, starting with the crew, as director and co-screenwriter, we have Kazui Nihonmatsu, who directed Genocide as well, and was the assistant director for Kira Kurosawa's The Idiot, which was one of the only films Kurosawa did at Shochiku.
Oh.
Your writers, Ebi Motomochi and Moriyoshi Aishida, they have no tokusatsu credits. This was their only one. Thank God. Funny enough, the composer Taku Izumi did a series for Toho called Taiyo no Atsu, which had an episode.
Familiar.
It had an episode where Haruo Nakajima appeared as Gaira.
Oh, this is the one where it's the Gaira versus Kila from Ultraman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that was pretty interesting. He also did the.
Have you seen that clip?
I have not.
Oh, you should. It's pretty cool.
You'll have to send it to me. He also did the score for Big Man Japan, which is kind of fitting because of, that. I haven't seen that movie, but it definitely screams like Minoru Kawasaki feel to me as well. And then he did the first 20th Century Boys live action film, Beginning of the End. And he has done a ton of anime work. A ton. The special effects director, Hiroshi Akita, did a lot of anime work. And Wataru Nakajima, the producer, also played a defense agency director in this movie, his only tokusatsu credits.
Mm-hmm.
As for the cast, we have Eiji Okada, who played Dr. Kato, who was in Woman in the Dunes, The Face of Another, which I've heard of that movie. I think it's like a thriller.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the original Lady Snowblood, which is relevant because we covered the 2001 science fiction adaptation of that, The Princess Blade. And he was in the Toho film Espy. As Captain Kazu Sino, you have Shunya Wazaki, who was in Kagaku Sentai Dynaman, the series and the movie, was in Reborn from Hell 1 and 2, and made an appearance in Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit.
Yeah.
The only cast member to return for the sequel. And then here we have, I also have Itoko Hirata, who played Michiko, who had no tokusatsu credits besides this. You had
wasn't this one of her only credits?
Yes, it was. You had Peggy Neal, who was in Terror Beneath the Sea with Sonny Chiba, Toho's Latitude Zero as an uncredited role, and her last appearance in tokusatsu was The Great Buddha Arrival. She actually just passed away. I think it was back in, was it December?
I don't remember.
It was very recently. And the sad part was she was just rediscovered. Avery Guerra, of working with like SRS Cinema and whatnot. He was like searching for Peggy for a very long time, and eventually found her. And like he was bringing her to like conventions, and she was like getting out there. She was getting healthy. She was in a really bad state. Age and addictions and whatnot just kind of lead you to a bad spot in your life. But because of Avery, Peggy started like getting herself in shape. So she could go to conventions. I actually got to see her at G-Fest before she passed away. She passed away December 6th of 2021. But she was very grateful for all of the fans and whatnot. Because like, people, she was kind of used to being that nobody, because who would recognize her from like Latitude Zero, or I believe she was even in the Green Slime, or like Terror Beneath the Sea, or even like when she returned to Tokusatsu for the Great Buddha Arrival. Like, who would recognize her?
Yeah.
But all these kaiju fans did. So that was, that was a really sad loss. Another Terror Beneath the Sea actor, Franz Gruber, who played Dr. Bierman, the annoying German scientist. No, he wasn't. Yeah, he was the annoying German scientist. Sorry, there's 2 German scientists in this, I think.
Yeah.
You have Franz Gruber as Dr. Berman, who is in Terror Beneath the Sea, Ultraman, Ultra 7, Mighty Jack, Genocide, Gamera vs.
Stein
Jiger.
was the annoying one.
Stein was, okay.
Yeah.
Gamera vs. Jiger, Submersion of Japan, the movie and the television show, Prophecies of Nostradamus and Espy. That was Franz Gruber. You had Mike Deneen, who was Dr. Stein, who was also in Genocide, Gappa the Triphibian Monster, Terror Beneath the Sea, Rodan, and Iron Finger, which, for anybody who doesn't know, that's also known as 100 Shot, 100 Kill, directed by Jun Fukuda, starring Akira Takarada, and what Godzilla fans would know him as Mr. Bullseye, which was referenced in Godzilla Final Wars. You had Keisuke Sony, who was Dr. Shoda, who was also in Genocide. And then here we have some minor roles that some actors played. We have Hiroshi. Who am I going to say, Rex?
Hiroshi Fujioka.
Who played Hongo in Kamen Rider 71 and many other Kamen Rider series and movies. He was also in Submersion of Japan. We have Ryuji Kita, who was in King Kong Escapes. Takanobu Hozumi, who did dub work for Piranha 3D, Piranha 3DD, The Fly 2, and was Perry Mason in the Perry Mason show, the one with Raymond Burr. So little Godzilla King of the Monsters connection there. You have Toshiyuki Watanabe, who ended up being a composer. He composed all the Shinkelian films, which kaiju fans would know as the most recent one featured a Snow Godzilla, which was the 3D model for the Gemstone G versus G movies. Yeah. He did the music for, here we go, here's our other bingo, Ring the Final Chapter. He did the score for Kyurer Sentai Go-Go 5? I butchered the first, but it's Go-Go 5. Okay. And he did
I don't know the name.
he did the music for all 3 Rebirth of Mothra movies and the Ambassador Magma anime. So there's a link that I bet you didn't know.
QQ Sentai Go-Go 5.
QQ Sentai Go-Go 5. So there, apparently I said, okay, Google there. Weird. My phone just came up. I'm like, nope, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking about Super Sentai. So there's your Kaiju and Ring connection, is they have the same composer for the television series.
Good.
You have Torihiko Hamada, who is in Deathquake, Ultra Q, and Quaidon. Jun Kashima, who was in Kazuku Sentai Gokaiger. Hideki Komari, who was in Genocide. Kathy Horan, who was in Monster Busca, the Subaraya show, King Kong Escapes, Ultra 7, The Green Slime, Gokei Body Snatcher from Hell, Genocide, and Latitude Zero. And that was all of the cast and crew that I found that could have links to other tokusatsu or kaiju films or adjacent stuff. So with that, I'm kind of out of notes.
Yeah.
However, it's a themed month, so we have to do our ranking. But then, because of this movie, I also wanted to ask you.
I wonder what our ranking's going to be.
So So last week we said we didn't think Gappa would stay at number 1. Let's see if we were right this week. So on the count of 3, we're going to say our least favorite, and then we're going to say our favorite. You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. The X from Outer Space. And our favorite is 1, 2, 3, Gappa the Triphibian Monster. So Gappa's still number 1.
Yeah. I mean, look, man, when I said that, I wasn't necessarily referring to this week. I was more referring to overall. Gappa will definitely be going down, I think.
Well, Gappa at least can say it held number 1 for half the month. I don't know. Maybe the next film we cover ends up being worse. I don't remember.
Who knows? I don't remember. I don't know what the other film is, so I don't know.
I don't either. So there's our ranking for this month. With that being said, I wanted also just to ask you another question, Rex. Mm-hmm. So I have a list here of all of our kaiju movies that we've covered this year.
Oh.
And I want to know... Actually, never mind. We're going to save that for a future episode.
Saving that for the end of the year, are we?
Yeah, we'll save that for the end of the year. So with that, we're going to do some housekeeping. Now that we've reached the end here, we've talked about the movie for a solid, I'd say about 2 hours roughly. So with that, I think we should go ahead and start wrapping things up here. So Rex, why don't you tell the lovely people where they can find you at?
Oh, well, dear viewers, you can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
And all of the links we bring up will be found in the description below for you to check out. As for me, hi, I'm Elijah. You can find me on Twitter at ET13Productions, on Instagram at ET13Productions, or on Twitter at ET13Productions. If you want to find my personal accounts, I won't link them, but it's not hard to find. If you are interested in, I don't know how much of my short film spiel is going to be left in the actual episode, but if you're actually interested in that, definitely look out at least on all of those fronts, because I will eventually post the short film to YouTube for everybody to watch. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. Real quick, I do want to highlight, while nobody has left us a review on Apple Podcasts yet, we're still sitting at a 3.1, which it'd be nice if we could get that bumped up. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. On Spotify now, we're sitting at a 5.0. We have 4 reviews, and all of them have been 5 stars. So thanks to everybody who has left us a review on Spotify. It's much appreciated. And don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You don't even need an Apple device. You just got to sign in, and you'll give it a little, you'll give a title, you'll give a brief explanation on why we're so awesome, and you'll give your name. So definitely please help us out that way. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't. That's actually very much a lie. I'm using a MacBook to do this podcast. Like I brought up, you can rate us on Spotify. If you want to stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook at the same handles. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you, you can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually, we'll have original artwork on there, but until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Recently, it looks like the conversation in our Kaiju Conversation Discord server was about Skull Island and Blazer coming out in 2 weeks. So, little Ultraman, little Kong, little Monsterverse. It's a great community full of great people having great conversations. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. Sometimes we post exclusives to the channel like bloopers for these episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have a monthly stream called Kaiju Conversation Live, and we also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Krzyzewski on the channel. I probably butchered his name, I apologize.
Yes, as always.
Yes, I know, right? I need to get better at this. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DeManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals in our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Gratton Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. And not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.